I love Persona 5. The character writing, the music, the art style and aesthetics, even the turn-based strategy gameplay. This game is awesome. No question. And anyone who loves video games or interesting concepts or good writing should absolutely play it. But, all that being said, there was something about Persona 5's story that never sat right with me. It was always missing something that felt integral to its thematic framework and subject matter. See, I'm a red-blooded American, raised on all the traditional American values, and there was one aspect of Persona 5's themes that, forget being underdeveloped, was just straight up missing in action. And that gaping thematic hole is how the Phantom Thieves regard free will. From Kamoshida's palace, when Morgana originally explained the metaverse concept, alarm bells were already ringing in my brain. The protagonists get hung up on the possibility that stealing desires might kill their targets, and rightly so. But another very obvious moral qualm was right there in their face, from Kamoshida all the way through to Shido. And that is free will. And free will is just never addressed. The Phantom Thieves are changing people on a fundamental level without their consent, and nobody ever stops to wonder if that's an ethical thing to do. Akechi and Sai Nijima are the only characters who kind of address this, but I'd argue that they're more raising issues with the vigilante aspect of the Phantom Thieves than any particular qualms about their disregard for free will. Not to mention that the revelations about Akechi's true nature kind of invalidate any moral arguments he made for law anyways, since he doesn't believe them himself. The idea that a story would cover the topic of societal repression and not address free will is so bizarre to me. So you're telling me that we're gonna go inside the minds of people we don't like and change them on a fundamental level because we don't like how they act?
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I guess you're right.
We are literally going to play God and turn people we don't like into puppets because we deemed their actions problematic. And then act like we did a good thing?
Too late for apologies!
Are we the baddies?
Like, no joke, for at least half the game, I thought that they were going to pull a big switch on us and there would come some crucial moment where we figure out that we've been playing the villains all along. Which would be dope, by the way. Somebody should make a game like that sometime. Seriously, I've never seen anyone else address this when discussing Persona 5, and I kinda feel like I must be crazy. Does nobody else find it weird that the issue of their target's free will is never once brought up? Like, am I the strange one? Nobody else thinks this was an incredible moral oversight on the part of the Phantom Thieves? It just violates some basic principles for me, and it's hard for me to justify that anything of real value is happening when it comes to these villains. Is compelled righteousness even still righteousness? Or is that just being a vegetable? The Phantom Thieves are turning these people into vegetables. Robots who they've programmed to be good and to feel guilt. Is feeling guilt of any real value if they didn't come to that conclusion on their own? Is being good of any real value if it's programmed, enforced goodness, not the choice to be better? Taking away the right of people to choose their own destiny, for good or ill, often leads to some disturbing justifications in the name of the greater societal good. And look, I'm not saying that cultures, societies, organizations, families, or even individuals can't incentivize good behaviors and de-incentivize bad behaviors for people around them. But those are incentives. That's like setting up consequences for choices, but it's not the removal of choice. That's why there are laws and social expectations. You can choose to break the law, and you can choose to break established social norms. You're just expected to deal with the consequences of that choice. You are not, however, programmed or modified forcibly to keep you from breaking laws or social norms. The knowledge of the difference between good and evil and the subsequent ability to choose between them is the core of human exceptionalism. I'd argue it's the core of sentience in general. And doing what is right or wrong is completely irrelevant when those actions are dictated by someone else. These moments that were supposed to be scenes of righteous triumph all felt kind of hollow to me because they didn't actually mean anything tangible. Forced confessions are just that. Forced. They cannot, by definition, be genuine displays of repentance. I kept expecting there to be some kind of fallout in the story for this breach of human rights, but it just never appeared. Like I said earlier, you were never revealed as the villains. There was never a consequential blowback in the plot for your dubious and cavalier disregard of individual sovereignty. The closest consequence was the public backlash for Okumura's death, which, again, didn't really have anything to do with free will in the first place, but more the fact that someone died. And we, as players, knew that his death was not morally on the Phantom Thieves anyway. It's just mind-boggling to me that free will is never addressed in this plot. The game never even addresses the question, really. Not in its base game. Some people might point to Persona 5 Royal as having addressed this theme, but while it does inch much closer to the landmine, it never actually sets it off. Royal does address the issue of choice, but the theme is more about if it's moral to force happiness on people at the expense of truth and agency. It never really touches the idea that people ought to be allowed to choose evil, and that it might be wrong to remove that choice from them. Now, I want to make clear that I'm not saying there's no upside whatsoever to the Phantom Thieves' disregard of individual sovereignty. There is, of course, the good of their target's victims no longer suffering, and that is an unequivocal good. But the manner in which those victims were liberated is probably as problematic to me as the crimes that were committed in the first place. It wouldn't really be a moral choice or a difficult one if there was no positive reason with which to justify unethical action. I simply tend to fall on the side of the argument that the ends never justify the means. It also strikes me as doubly ironic that Persona 5 omits addressing this theme when a large portion of the thematic material for Rin Amamiya has to do with how he feels repressed by society. A character who both figuratively and literally has a large portion of his freedom forcibly taken from him, then goes on to take other people's free will from them. That is just a really strange choice to me, and it clashes heavily with the established themes. Apparently, free will and individuality are to be celebrated when it's for me, my friends, and people who think like I do. But when it comes to people I don't agree with, or who I think are evil, then free will and individuality can be discarded. Do you see what I'm struggling with here? It's like the game wants to say something positive about free will, but then displays staggering hypocrisy when standing by the principle of free will gets hard, when it comes to the question of if people should be allowed to act in a way that we deem to be evil. It's a double standard that I just can't get behind. Either we believe that free will is the best course of action, or we don't. Saying that free will is a must when we deem the outcome good is not support for free will. Truly supporting free will is when you stand by the principle even when it's difficult. Even when people choose what you hate. Even if they choose to be evil. Hey guys, thanks for your time. Like I said earlier, I love Persona 5, even though the thematic presentation of its themes baffle me. It's got a lot going for it in other aspects, so if you've never played it, I do definitely recommend giving it a chance. If you've got your own thoughts on free will and how it's portrayed in Persona 5, let me know in the comments. I'd be glad to hear other perspectives on it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.